Hello again, my name is Dr. Bill Johnson. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Exploring Our Schools. For those of you who see the show on a regular basis, you may be wondering where my guests are today, but made a decision about 2 weeks ago to try something very different. And what you don't know is that on a regular basis, I work with somebody by the name of Jason Starr, who is the director of the studio and has worked with me since 1989, 1990. And what we oftentimes do is get involved in a whole variety of different discussions about education in general. And we thought it might be a good idea just to include you in one of those discussions that he and I very often have about the condition of the schools, the condition of education. And so rather than in fact open it up and interview some of our kids or some of our teachers, actually to engage him and I in a conversation on what exactly is going on in our school system, what's going on in the world. I think if you don't mind, Jason, I'd love to talk a little bit about the studio. Mm-hmm. I think what people don't realize is that you and I have worked together now since almost embarrassing, but 1989, 1990, mm-hmm. When we first began to conceive of this idea of a studio. Mm-hmm. And at that time, both of us agreed on one thing. It had to be about our students and about instruction. Mm-hmm. So while we were very intent on getting out to the public some ideas on the airwaves, the most important aspect of this was that it was going to be, and what people don't realize is that you and I are surrounded by students today, mm-hmm. in the cameras, in the control room. So it's just been a very, very interesting 27 years. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite a period. I mean, before the lights came on and the cameras were rolling, we were talking about how this very room was a classroom and how the summer that we started, we already ordered equipment and designed the facility. A truck came that summer to spray the ceiling and the walls with this sound-absorbing material. Just one of hundreds of steps in converting these couple of classrooms to a television studio. You were mentioning the philosophy. I mean, the philosophy is student participation on every level. So when theatrical productions are being filmed, it's a student director. When there are athletic competitions, again, it's a student crew. This show, which we do almost weekly, is the production of a TV production class.
Yeah.
In the actual design, we had a decision. I say we because Robert Krager, which is the district technician, who's a brilliant engineer.
Who's, by the way, listening to this, so he's going to be a little bit embarrassed by us mentioning his name.
His name probably doesn't get mentioned enough. Because he deserves so much credit. But we made the decision that all of the equipment, even very technical equipment, needs to be available for the students to have as close to a professional time here as possible. And that was, we thought, a bit of a gamble. There weren't that many high school TV studios at the time, although there were several. One of them we took a tour of, and we saw that all the camera control units, which are in the control room, which determine the tint of the mm-hmm. camera's color, how bright it is, those were under lock and key because a student could come by and just turn a switch and throw everything into disarray. We decided that we respect the students, they will respect the studio, and we've never had a problem. But we have great kids in this district.
We do, and we have great staff to work with the kids, mm-hmm. and so I think it's been a very, very good marriage between what we want to accomplish in terms of the studio. And I will say that some of them look like student productions, but a lot of the work that we do here, I would say, clearly resembles what happens in the world out there, and these kids get a great experience before they leave us. Mm-hmm. Many of whom, by the way, have continued to pursue this as a career.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very gratifying. And even those who, most of whom, do not pursue it directly as a career, when they go into industry or corporations that are service industry or finance industry, communications of this sort is such a crucial part now of business.
It is.
If you go into marketing, you need to know about, you will at some point interface with or hire a TV crew to do a marketing piece, a promotional piece. It's just part of our lives now.
Right, yeah. Well, I thank you. I can't thank you enough for what you have and your staff here has accomplished, so.
Thank you.
Anyway, let's get back to where we began today, which is, again, kind of a drop-in on conversations that you and I have had on numerous occasions.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to kind of reverse the tables. Usually it's me asking questions. Today it's actually your turn. So.
Yes, well, what a kick. Well, I want to start broadly with what is public education really about? What are we trying to accomplish?
You know, the overall goal of education is really to develop a very knowledgeable citizenry. And much more recently, it's all about creating a workforce as well. When you combine the two of those things and the level of sophistication that you need to operate as a citizen in today's world and as an employee in today's world, so much of the focus has shifted from just elementary and high school. My grandparents got an 8th grade and were very happy and proud of that. You know, my parents were very happy that they went to high school, and then my father went to college when he was an adult. My mom went to college. But now it's expected.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we grew up in a household where it was just assumed that college was a part of our life. We assume as a system right now, more along the lines of a K-16 system, not just K-12. We have to begin to take a look at the fact that tomorrow's world is going to require a level of sophistication that can only really be enhanced or, in fact, a part of the life of somebody if, in fact, they've experienced a college degree or, in fact, a number of years of college. So what does that do for us as a national system? Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I know you and I have talked a lot about the Common Core in recent years. What that really is a reflection of two organizations, national organizations that got together a number of years ago, who took a look at the landscape and saw the same thing I just was describing to you, and said, whoops, we really need to begin to put together a set of standards nationally. Now, one of those organizations was the Organization of Governors, and the second organization was the Organization of Chief School Administrators for the state. Mm-hmm. They got together and made a decision that we should establish for this nation a set of standards that, in fact, would enable every state, if they participated, to prepare all of the kids in their public schools for college. So I guess, you know, the emblematic phrase that became attached to that movement was college and career ready. Mm-hmm. So that, again, getting back to that other aspect that I talked about, it's just not creating a knowledgeable citizenry, but it's also helping those who go through school, in fact, to develop the skills necessary to pursue a career. So the whole idea was this college and career readiness. They took national experts from all over this nation. They took teachers and administrators literally from every state who chose to participate and worked together to come up with a common set of standards in two subject areas or skill areas, one in math and the other in language arts or mm-hmm. English, mm-hmm. and put together a K-12 set of standards, which came to be known as the Common Core. People were applauding the effort, and in fact, when it initially came out, applauded the actual work that was being done. Every state, however, took those standards, and then did something with them. I mean, in New York State, We adopted those standards and then turned around and then amplified it by creating a whole series of modules that was an interpretation by the then State Education Department about what the Common Core meant. And then developed a series of tests associated with them and began administering those tests before actually teachers. So it wasn't the Common Core that created the issue. It was New York State's interpretation of the Common Core that created many of the issues in New York State. Many of us are still wedded to the concept of college and career readiness. I mean, so much of what we do here, even in this studio, is all about adulthood, not just about growing up as a teenager. It's seeing what's going to happen to these people, or these children, or these adolescents, 5, 10 years down the road. So the question then becomes, how do we interpret that here in Rockville Center? So we have an issue in the district itself. We have an issue in the state. For whatever the reason, we in New York State created a very controversial set of standards or interpretations of those standards, and ultimately made some, I think, flawed decisions about implementation.
Could you tell me one example of a controversial aspect of what the state decided for the Common Core?
I can give you a couple of examples. One of them in recent years really has to do with the preparation of kids for college. It has been the gold standard forever that calculus, before kids leave high school, if we're able to expose them to calculus and get them into a calculus course, even if they don't do well in the calculus course, the fact that they have experienced it before they leave us is a critical factor in doing well when they get into college. All right? Mm-hmm. The Common Core, the way in which it was established, assumed something. And that assumed that algebra was a ninth grade course, and that at the end of that 3 years of state studies, which is Algebra 1, Geometry, and then Algebra 2, would end up in juniors, which meant that you could not get to calculus. There needs to be a pre-calculus course. They removed a lot of the trig from it. I know I'm probably getting a little bit more technical than we should, but it was a flaw. Mm-hmm. And so we have had to kind of embark on our own courses of study. We have algebra given in 8th grade so that kids can finish with the three-year sequence in the state math series by the end of their sophomore year, introduce them to pre-calculus and then calculus before they finish it. And we have upwards of 80% of our kids now involved in calculus before they leave us. An extraordinary and phenomenal task that has been taken on willingly by this high school, and in fact, then they've done a spectacular job in accomplishing that goal. The state, however, with the Common Core, ends up coming up short on that goal. Mm-hmm. So again, it was a calculated error on their part, in my opinion, that they began removing a lot of these things from the Common Core, which led kids astray in another direction without ever really providing them with the background necessary to get them involved in calculus.
I see.
The other one, and you know, I don't want to dwell on it forever, really has to do with the 3 through 8 testing program that emerged as a result of the New York's interpretation of the Common Core. And at the same time, the introduction by the governor into the entire conversation about standards, the use of test data to evaluate teachers. So what got mixed into this entire conflagration was 2 things trying to be accomplished at the same time. In grades 3 through 8, trying to effectively measure how well kids were progressing along the line towards whatever goals the state had for each grade level. And at the same time, using that data to evaluate our teachers and to try to come up with a series of numbers. Mm-hmm. Anybody who knows anything about testing knows that once you begin to introduce duality of purpose into testing, for the most part, you increase the length of the test and probably are going to compromise its validity, either as a measure of student progress or as a measure of teacher effectiveness. And we ended up doing both. So, unfortunately, the state recognized the fault line in the testing program. And to its credit, by the way, has backed away from the utilization of the test data on two fronts. One, it has said that on its face value, we cannot use it to either place children or to promote children. So what does that tell you about the data itself? It says on its face value, there is so much error in the actual information we're getting on an individual child that we are precluded as a school district from, in fact, making a decision about an individual child on the basis of this data alone. So we have to utilize other information. The other aspect of that really has to do with the use of this data for teachers. There's plenty of research that suggests that data is critical. It's very important. Test data is very important and is somewhat reflective of what goes on in the classroom. But many of the studies say it's far more complicated than that. And in order for us to, in fact, begin to assign values to the work that teachers do in the classroom, we really must begin to be able, better than we do now, to articulate numbers or, in fact, pull out from the testing data all of the other influential factors that contribute to performance of kids on tests. You and I probably both know that so much depends on the family. Kids who are really good readers are only good readers in part because of what we do, and in part because of what happens in families. So we have to be able to extract that and focus on exclusively on that part of the measurement device that is exclusively associated with what our teachers do. That's a yeoman's task. It's not easy to do. They have recognized that, and as a result have postponed the utilization of that data for use as an evaluative device with teachers. So it's still a work in progress. More recently, the state has gone back, reevaluated the Common Core, in fact, have come up with a whole new set of standards for New York State. They're no longer calling it the Common Core. They've given it a brand new name. And as a result of that, we'll in fact be preparing teachers now. They're doing it the right way.
Oh,
We're now on
rectifying
a
some
course
of
of action which I think is going to end up with a better set of tests, a more rational means of implementing these standards, and a much more close alignment to the reality of what we're trying to accomplish in New York State, and certainly here in Rockville Center.
You know, you made a point that, you know, is so crucial, of course, about family support of their children. And when you run a public school district, as you do, you don't get to pick and choose the families that send their children here. It's for the entire town, the entire public. But since the school is doing more than preparing workers of the future, but we're preparing citizens of the future and people that need to have and want to have successful lives, the school district needs to intervene where families can't.
Exactly. So, look, we're going to have to come back, Jason, and we're going to have to talk about exactly what we do here in this school district with regard to our interpretation of what college and career ready. We're actually down to a minute left. So
Wow.
Exactly, I know that. See, you often warn me, and I have this thing sitting in my ear, and you're like always saying 1 minute, 2 minutes. So I've gotten the 1 minute warning. So we're really down to the end. Okay. I'd love to do this again with you, and really, instead of focusing on the more general picture, really get down to some of the specifics about what we do in the school district. And but to get to the question that you asked, you can't have high standards and expect everybody to be prepared without providing them with adequate support. And that's the magic of what public education is about. How do you support everybody? Have those high expectations for everybody, and then move everyone through this funnel that gets everybody prepared to operate independently as a student in college or as a worker when they decide to either finish college and enter the workforce or leave us and go into the workforce. Actually, I call it magic. It's not. It's just a lot of hard work. It's understanding how children grow, how children interact with adults in the classrooms, and then designing environments that make sense for us without changing our goals. The goals need to stay the same. The support systems continue to have to change. So that's the short answer version of what I would like to talk about, but we really need to talk about what those goals are. And maybe we should come back another day.
Okay.
So,
I would love to hear more specificity about it, because I know
not sure
it. I
anybody
see it
else
in
would, but
school.
yeah, but we really need to talk about Rockville Center someday, and exactly what we do in this community to match what I just discussed with you is both the national and state goals. So, thank you very much. This is it's been fun for me. I hope you've enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen. And I usually don't get an opportunity to either discuss this with you or to discuss this with some of my colleagues. But at any rate, thank you for joining us, and we certainly hope to see you next time. Bye now.